I was my brother's best man. The plan was simple: show up, say a toast, shake some hands. What actually happened? Let's just say the cake wasn't the only thing that got wrecked. 3 months before the wedding, I got the text. You free July 9th. Need you to be best man. It was from my brother, Ryan. Short, no punctuation, typical of him. No call. No build-up. Just that. I said yes. Not because I was thrilled, but because it's what you do. He's my younger brother by 3 years. Grew up in my shadow, then somehow lapped me by 30, better job, bigger house, the kind of fiancé that makes perfect small talk and never has a hair out of place. Her name was Natalie. We met twice before the engagement. Both times felt like a job interview with soft lighting. Everything about her said, control. Even her laugh sounded focus grouped. The wedding was going to be formal. Big. Clean. She came from the kind of family that books country clubs a year out and calls rehearsal dinners, pre-ceremony briefings. A week after the invite, I got a PDF with the schedule, 4 pages long. I was listed as BM1, primary male escort, Ryan. There was a link to a Dropbox folder with color codes for suits, a timeline broken down to 15-minute blocks, and an optional speech template in case I needed inspiration. That was the first sign this wasn't going to be normal. The second came when Ryan called me, which he never does, just to say, hey, try not to improvise anything. I said, like during the toast. He said, yeah. Just, keep it clean. I asked, clean or safe? He paused. Both. That's when I knew, this wedding wasn't just planned, it was curated. Like a museum piece with live actors. And I was one of them. The rehearsal was held on a Friday evening at the venue, some restored estate with a fake barn aesthetic and polished concrete floors. The kind of place where the air smells like eucalyptus and the parking lot costs extra. I got there 10 minutes early. Natalie's family was already in formation. Her mother wore white, not ivory, not cream, just straight up white, like she was testing lighting for her own entrance. Her father looked like someone who didn't speak much unless money was on the table. Ryan gave me the nod when I walked in. No hug. He looked exhausted. The officiant was some guy named Eric, a friend of Natalie's family. Young, too put together. He shook my hand and told me how excited he was to celebrate their journey. Natalie was directing the flow like a wedding planner with a clipboard, except she didn't need one. She knew every cue by heart. Dad walks me down at beat 4, she said. Ryan, you stand here, not there, the light's better from this side. Toasts will be done immediately after the second dance. Please no off-the-cuff stuff. She looked at me when she said that last part. Like it was rehearsed. I nodded. Didn't say much. There were 8 bridesmaids and 7 groomsmen. Uneven. I was told that was intentional for the aesthetic. One of the groomsmen, Mason, pulled me aside at one point. I remembered him vaguely from college, mutual circles. He said, hey, just a heads up, you might want to be careful with what you say in your toast. Why? He smirked. Some stuff's not public. I asked, what kind of stuff? He looked over his shoulder. Let's just say not everybody here was supposed to still be in the picture. Then he walked off. I didn't press. Not yet. Later, during the seating walkthrough, Natalie snapped at her maid of honor for standing in the wrong spot by 2 feet. Loud enough that 3 people turned their heads. No apology. Ryan stepped in to smooth it over, but you could tell, the tension wasn't new. It had a rhythm. Like something rehearsed over months. At dinner afterward, I sat next to one of Natalie's cousins. She asked me how long Ryan and Natalie had been together. I said, just over 2 years. She blinked. Huh. She told me they met 4 years ago. I didn't say anything. Just filed it away. The room was too clean, too staged, too managed. It didn't feel like a celebration. It felt like a rollout. And I had a front row seat. The bachelor party wasn't wild. Ryan's not that guy, and Natalie definitely didn't want a mess. So instead of clubs or a Vegas trip, we got a private room at a whiskey bar downtown. Leather seats, curated flight menus, soft jazz playing through hidden speakers. Controlled. Like everything else. There were 8 of us total, mostly old college friends and 2 of his coworkers. Everyone was civil, dressed like they were networking. No speeches. No strippers. Just sipping and small talk. Ryan was quiet. That's normal for him when he's tired, but this was different. He laughed when people expected him to, answered questions, played the role. But his eyes kept drifting to the clock on the wall like he was counting the minutes. After a couple hours, Mason, same groomsman from rehearsal, pulled me aside again. This time with a bourbon in hand and just enough alcohol in him to loosen the edges. He said, "Hey, just curious. You ever meet Natalie's friend Cameron?" I said no. He grinned. "That's interesting. I didn't take the bait. Just let him talk. Because Cameron used to be around a lot. Like, a lot. Then suddenly, gone. Just vanished from the friend group after Natalie and Ryan got serious." I asked, "What are you getting at?" He leaned back, checked over his shoulder. "Let's just say, some of us remember that 6-month pause they took a while ago." It wasn't really a pause. I didn't respond. Just stared at him. He added, "All I'm saying is, if someone brings up the timeline tomorrow, be careful what comes out. A few people in that room know more than they're letting on." Then he walked away, finished his drink, and started talking fantasy football with someone else like we'd never spoken. I watched Ryan the rest of the night. He wasn't drunk. Barely touched his second drink. When I asked if he was good, he nodded without looking up. Said, "Yeah. Just ready for it to be done." I asked, "The night?" He said, "The whole thing." That was the first moment I thought maybe this wedding wasn't just for show. Maybe it was a decision already in motion. And I wasn't sure if it was his, or hers. Wedding day. Call time, 9 a.m. sharp at the venue. They had a full itinerary: breakfast buffet, grooming kits, someone's cousin doing photos of the groomsmen getting ready, coordinated socks, matching cufflinks, a Spotify playlist titled Ryan's Calm Morning. I got there at 8:45. Ryan was already in the room, shirt unbuttoned, staring at his phone like it owed him an explanation. He looked up. "Hey." I nodded. "You sleep?" "Some." He didn't look rested. The room was bright. Too bright. Everything smelled like cologne and hairspray. Someone had a speaker playing soft indie music, but no one was really listening. At 9:20, while the photographer set up, Ryan's phone buzzed. He checked the screen, tapped it off, then deleted something. I saw it. Not the message. Just the look. I asked, "All good?" He nodded, too quickly. "Just spam," he said. He tucked the phone into his jacket pocket like he was locking it away. A few minutes later, one of the groomsmen handed out flasks engraved with everyone's initials. Classic gesture. We took a few photos pretending to drink. Ryan actually drank. Not much, but enough for someone who rarely does. By 10:30, the bridal party had arrived. We weren't allowed to see them, of course, but Natalie's voice carried through the walls, tight, clipped, directing staff about table settings and the seating chart. Ryan sat down, tie in his hands, not tying it. "Can I ask you something?" he said. "Of course. If someone told you something about the person you were about to marry, the night before, would you believe it?" "Depends who told me. Depends what they said." He nodded. Didn't follow up. I didn't ask. At 11:15, the planner came in and gave us the 5-minute call. The room cleared. Just me and him left. I fixed his tie. He stared out the window. "You ready?" I asked. He didn't answer. He just stood up, adjusted his jacket, and walked to the door. That's the thing about weddings. Once they start moving, it takes a hell of a lot to stop them. The weather was perfect. Clear skies, low 70s, just enough wind to keep the bugs off. The venue's outdoor space looked exactly like the brochure: white chairs in neat rows, floral arch with unnecessary symmetry, strings playing something expensive and forgettable. I stood next to Ryan at the altar. He looked sharp, controlled, but his right hand kept twitching at the side of his pants, like he wanted to reach for his phone again. The guests were seated by the time Natalie walked in. She looked flawless. Her walk was rehearsed, her smile was tailored, and the applause felt like it came on cue. Her father walked her down the aisle like he was handing off an investment. When she got to Ryan, they locked eyes. Nothing in her expression changed. Not a twitch. Not a blink. If he felt anything, he didn't show it. The officiant cleared his throat and started his speech, something about growth and balance, trust and shared futures. I wasn't really listening. Neither was Ryan. I could see it. His eyes kept drifting. Not to Natalie, to the crowd. Scanning rows. Looking for someone. Maybe for the person who sent that message. 10 minutes in, just before the vows, something shifted. Third row, left side, one of Natalie's relatives slumped in his seat. I noticed it first because the person next to him jumped, then whispered, Then 2 rows turned around. Then it got quiet. The officiant paused. Natalie turned her head, frown setting in like a hairline crack in glass. A voice called out, "We need help." He'd passed out. Completely limp. Someone said heat stroke. Someone else called for water. A guest pulled out their phone, dialed 911 before anyone could say not to. The music stopped. It wasn't dramatic, no chaos, no screaming. Just silence and tension and a man unconscious during the most choreographed moment of someone else's life. Natalie was not pleased. Ryan stepped forward, trying to help, but she grabbed his wrist, gently but firmly, and whispered something to him. I couldn't hear the words. 10 minutes later, paramedics arrived, took the man away, said he'd be fine. The planner checked her watch, asked if we could resume. Natalie said yes. Straight face. As if nothing had happened. But it had. And now every guest sat a little straighter. A little more alert. Because something unscripted had cracked open the perfect wedding. And everyone was waiting to see what else might slip through. After the ceremony, they herded us straight into the photo session. The planner called it golden hour prep, even though the sun was still high. Apparently, the schedule mattered more than the lighting. We were marched through a series of setups like factory line wedding dolls, bridesmaids here, groomsmen there, parents in the middle, and so on. I've done a lot of forced smiles in my life. That afternoon might have topped them all. The photographer worked fast, but it wasn't enough for Natalie. Can we redo that one? Can you angle more to the right? Why is Mason standing next to Levi? Switch them. That last one stuck. Because Mason and Levi, both groomsmen, exchanged a glance. Something tight, familiar, and not friendly. Levi said, "It's fine. Just take the shot." Mason stepped out of line. "I'm good. Skip me for this one." Natalie blinked. "What?" "I'm good," he said again. "Take it without me." Everyone froze for a second. Then the photographer kept going, like nothing had happened. I caught Ryan's eyes. He didn't react, just adjusted his jacket and smiled. Later, when we moved to the group shots with family, Mason didn't reappear. I found him leaning against the catering truck, sipping water like it was vodka. I walked over. "What was that?" He didn't look at me. "Levi knows why." That's all he said. 10 minutes later, Natalie came looking for him. Her voice was tight but quiet. "Mason, come back. It's one picture." He didn't move. She tried again. "We're not doing this today." He finished his drink, set the cup down on the truck rail, and walked back toward the building. Not toward the photos. Just, away. I asked Ryan later, "You know what's going on with them?" He just said, "Not here." The photos wrapped 30 minutes later. But whatever got left out of the frame. Dinner was already halfway done when the planner gave me the nod. Time for the toast. I stood up, adjusted my jacket, and picked up the mic. They'd given me a 5-minute window. Natalie had actually scheduled it, best man toast, 7:15 to 7:20. I wasn't planning to go long. I'd rehearsed something safe, light, polished. No surprises. It was all in my head, line by line. But then I looked at Ryan. He was smiling, but not the kind you give when you're happy. The kind you wear when you've trained your face to behave in front of 100 people. So I changed course. Nothing reckless. Just real. I started with a joke about us as kids, Ryan building things, me breaking them. Got the usual polite laughs. Then I talked about how relationships aren't built in the loud moments, the proposals, the parties, but in the quiet ones no one sees. And I said this. They made it through a 6-month break that would have ended most couples. But they came back stronger. More certain. And honestly, that's when I knew it was serious. Silence. 1 second too long. Natalie's fork stopped midair. Her mother looked up. Ryan didn't move. And I knew, right then, I'd said something I wasn't supposed to. The break wasn't public knowledge. I wrapped the speech quickly. Thanked the guests. Toasted. Sat down. Natalie leaned toward Ryan and whispered something I couldn't hear. He didn't respond. I took a sip of water. The mic was passed to the maid of honor. She looked like she'd just swallowed a battery. She read her notes with shaking hands, kept her speech short, and sat down without smiling. DJ cut in fast with upbeat music. Something light. Disposable. But the silence hadn't left the room. And every person at table 2, Natalie's family, looked like they'd just learned something they weren't meant to hear. The music helped, for about 90 seconds. Then it faded into background noise, and people returned to their food like nothing had happened. But they weren't really eating. Just moving forks. Glancing sideways. I felt it most from Natalie's side of the room. Her mother, especially. She didn't smile anymore. Just stared at Ryan, then at Natalie, then back at Ryan. After dinner, while the servers cleared plates, I stepped outside. Needed air. Regret hadn't set in, but the weight of it had. I hadn't meant to cause damage. Just thought I was sharing something real. Apparently, too real. Ryan found me 10 minutes later. No jacket. Just shirt sleeves, tie slightly loose. He didn't yell. Just said, they didn't know. I nodded. He lit a cigarette, first one I'd seen him touch in years. I said, I thought it was common knowledge. It was. To people who needed to know. That told me everything. It wasn't the break that was the problem. It was what happened during it. He didn't elaborate. I didn't ask. We walked back in, side by side, like nothing was wrong. But inside, Natalie's mom was standing. Not at her seat. At Ryan's table. She waited until he got within 10 feet, then said, loud enough for our side to hear. Is there something you two didn't tell us? Natalie froze. Ryan's smile vanished. The room fell quiet again. Chairs shifted. Glasses clinked. Natalie said nothing. Her mom stared at her. I asked you a question, she said, still calm. Ryan finally answered, it's not important. Wrong answer. Natalie's dad stood up. Walked over. Whispered something to his wife. Tried to lead her back to her seat. She didn't move. She looked at Natalie. Was it Cameron? One name. That was it. Natalie's face didn't change. Not right away. Then she blinked. Ryan looked at her. And the silence that followed hit harder than anything else said that night. The DJ let the music fade out completely this time. No one moved. Because now, even the guests who didn't know the context. They knew it wasn't just wedding drama. Something had cracked. And everyone could hear it. After the question, after the silence, after the look, music came back. But it didn't fix anything. It just layered sound over something no one wanted to address. Natalie's mom eventually sat down. Her dad didn't. He stayed standing behind her, arms crossed, not angry, just waiting. Like he expected something else to happen. And he was right. An hour later, during what was supposed to be the celebration set, upbeat music, open bar in full swing, the crowd shifted. You could feel it. Not in the volume, but in the way people stood. Less movement. Less joy. More watching. And then I saw him. I didn't know his name. Didn't have to. Black shirt. Tan jacket. Confident stride. He walked straight to the edge of the dance floor and stood, waiting. Like someone who knew he'd be seen. Natalie saw him. She hesitated mid-conversation. Blinked once. Then looked away, quickly, too quickly. Ryan didn't notice. Not at first. Then the guy stepped forward. Not to Ryan. To Natalie. He didn't say anything. Just nodded. Gave a half smile. It wasn't romantic. Wasn't inappropriate. It was worse. It was familiar. Ryan looked over just in time to see the end of it. He turned to me. Who is that? I didn't answer. Because I didn't know for sure. But I had a strong guess. Natalie didn't introduce him. Didn't wave him off. She just excused herself and walked toward the bar. Alone. Ryan didn't follow. He stood still. The guy didn't stay either. After a few more minutes, he slipped out. No goodbyes. Gone. But the silence he left behind. Still there. A groomsman leaned over to me. That him? I didn't say yes. Didn't need to. The dance floor never recovered. People moved, but the rhythm was off. The tension had become part of the song. It started with a whisper. Natalie came back from the bar with a glass of something dark and a look that said she was done explaining anything to anyone. Ryan was still standing by the edge of the dance floor. Still trying to figure out if what he'd seen meant anything. That's when he walked up to me. No smile. Why did you say it? I knew what he meant. The toast. The 6-month break. I said, because it happened. And you survived it. That's worth saying. He didn't answer. His jaw locked. His eyes stayed fixed on the middle of the room, but I knew he wasn't seeing any of it. Then he walked. Not to Natalie. To Mason. Pulled him aside. Low conversation. I couldn't hear the words, but I saw Mason's shoulders stiffen. Then Mason pointed across the room. Toward Levi. The two groomsmen who couldn't stand next to each other earlier. Ryan didn't hesitate. He turned, walked across the room, and tapped Levi on the shoulder. Levi turned. The moment hung. I couldn't hear it, but I could read the body language. Accusation. Denial. A half step forward. Mason stepped in. Then someone else. And then a glass hit the floor. Hard. It didn't shatter, just bounced, then rolled. But the sound cracked through the music like a rifle. The DJ cut the track. People backed up. Levi shoved Mason, open palm, but with intent. A bridesmaid screamed. Natalie's father stood. Again. And Natalie? Still at the bar. Watching. Not moving. Security wasn't fast, but they didn't have to be. The fight didn't go far. 3 people held Levi back. Mason stepped away, hands up. But the damage was done. The guests scattered. No more dancing. No more photos. No more pretending. Ryan stood alone in the middle of the room. Tie loose. Eyes hollow. And I knew, we weren't watching a wedding anymore. We were watching a ship sink in slow motion. They didn't call it off officially. There was no announcement, no speech, no dramatic walkout. People just left. 10 minutes after the fight, the DJ started packing up. The bar shut down without being told. The servers kept clearing plates like nothing happened. Natalie's parents were gone. Vanished. No goodbye. Levi was escorted out through the side exit, still yelling at no one in particular. Mason disappeared. Never saw him again that night. I stayed. Not because I wanted to. Because I couldn't bring myself to be the first one to walk away from my brother. Ryan sat at the sweetheart table. Jacket off. Tie hanging loose. One hand resting on a glass that wasn't full. Natalie wasn't with him. At some point, she left the building. I asked the planner if she'd seen her. She just shook her head and said, I think she went to her car. No one followed. At 10:45 p.m., the venue staff started folding chairs. I helped them. No music. No cake cutting. No bouquet toss. Just scattered centerpieces, a tipped-over chair, and an empty spot where the bride was supposed to be. At 11:02, I finally said, You want to go? Ryan nodded once. Stood up. Didn't say a word. We walked out together. Not like a wedding night. More like leaving a crime scene that no one wanted to report. In the parking lot, I saw Natalie's car was gone. Ryan stared at the spot for a second. Then opened his door. Before he got in, I said, You okay? He paused. Took a breath. Then said, I think I was lying to myself before she ever had the chance. Then he got in and drove off. No big exit. No breakdown. Just silence. And it was the most honest part of the whole night. A week passed. No photos were posted. The photographer emailed asking if the couple still wanted edits. I don't know if they ever responded. The venue kept their deposit. The catering invoice wasn't paid in full. Natalie's parents didn't reach out to anyone from our side. There was no honeymoon. Ryan stayed at my place for 3 nights, then got a hotel. Didn't talk much. Didn't need to. Some things don't require explanation when everyone saw it unravel in real time. On the 8th day, I got a text from him. No greeting. Just, not your fault. I should have said no 6 months ago. Thanks for not pretending. That was it. No follow-up. No, we'll talk later. And honestly, it felt right. Because the real ending didn't happen at the wedding. It happened long before that. The wedding was just the first time anyone bothered to admit it.